The Everlasting Social Conformity and Normality by Natanya Lenkong,
John Saloza,
Olivia Mora,
and
Caitlin So.
This concept is highly prevalent in the United States, which creates expectations toward people. Every gender, class, ethnicity, and age are expected to conform into a certain social norm because they perceive it as a normality, even if it is vile.
In this video, we hope to gather data that will show different perspectives from people regarding social conformities and normalities to discover if this topic truly has a negative influence on people and society as a whole. We choose to interview people rather than obtaining answers online in order to receive a credible set of data.
Hey, I'm Miss Butts. I teach U.S. History, AP US History here at Grand Terrace High School.
Hi everybody, my name is David Huerta, biology teacher here at Grand Terrace High School.
My name is Judith Truitt and I'm a junior at Grand Terrace High School.
It would depend what setting I'm in. So like at school, I think those expectations are a little bit more mellowed out in terms of being like segregated from the other demographics that I fall under. But if I'm like in society as a female, there's like an expectation almost that like someone's gonna hold the door open for me. As a person of color, it's like almost expected that I know certain specific cultural things that represent my community. And so it just depends where I'm at and what the expectation is.
As a person of color, it hits close to home actually, because I have experienced in the past where I have had to be on the most best behavior because of, for example, incidences that some people might not have to go through, like getting pulled over and then not having necessarily a reason why I got pulled over, but making sure I'm on my best behavior so nothing bad happens. Whereas I've heard stories from some other friends who haven't experienced that in terms of like law enforcement. Unfortunately, I've experienced where I've had to just make sure I fall in line to make sure that nothing happens adversely to me, sort of thing. So I kind of feel like a little bit pressured in that sense to maintain the best behavior possible.
I've noticed in myself, I hold the door open. That may not seem like a big deal, but I hold the door open very often for other individuals, and I do it for an extended amount of time. And I take my own time that I could be using talking to my friends and socializing with my friends, which is the social norm, teenagers in a high school. So I am actually not doing the social norm of talking to my friends and when I hold the door open for other individuals. And I don't think social norms are expected. I don't think there's like a checklist people make off when you're introduced to somebody and you interact with somebody. I don't think there is like a big weight of like social norms hanging on me because you're not conscious of it. You just act in a polite manner. You're not aware that you're acting in such a way. And I think it's just a part of who you are as well.
It depends what it is once again, so that's going to be like my caveat for everything. The to what extent situation, as we all know from A-Push World. In many situations, the benefits of conforming to everyone else creates more of a, I want to say a safe or like a less burdensome experience. So you're not constantly meeting roadblocks, you're not constantly being challenged, you're not dealing with all that stress. But at the same time, if it's like at the expense of your own self-expression and your own happiness, then it could possibly outweigh in terms of having to conform to what other people expect you to do.
I feel if it was equitable across all types of people, I think social norms is an awesome sort of character trait to be developed for people. However, when we see a disparity where not everyone is held to the same standard, I feel like that can give some sort of cognitive dissonance or some moment of thought and pause for people who are like, wait, how come I have to do this, but I don't see other people doing it and they're getting away with things. So that can kind of make them feel like, why am I even trying?
I would say positive impact. I would say recently there's been this culture of tolerance. The social norms can be helpful. They can create tolerance or they can create discrimination. And also politeness. So that's what I think the biggest thing for me of the social norms is being a polite person, because I think everything else is your own individual. Like you have your own thoughts. Man has free will. There's not someone speaking into your ear that you're forced to speak those words or forced to act in that way. There may be occasions when you're acting your own unique individual way and there's those that'll view you differently or may not be your friend. That's not an obstacle. That sounds so like rude, but you can choose not to be their friend because they're not the ones that'll cultivate your individualism and who you are in the world. And I mean, there's people that are tolerant and understanding and compassionate. You simply have to find those individuals who you'll all be in a positive atmosphere of who you are and who you can be.
I would say the majority of the time, it's more yes, they can hinder you than not, they don't hinder you. If you didn't have to think about what other people's expectations of you were, you might pursue like a passion project or not have to worry about, all right, I have to go to this school because someone thinks I should go to this school, or I have to like make sure I don't get in debt because life is a challenge. Like those kind of expectations can limit you more than they can benefit you, but at the same time, if it's for the sacrifice of safety, then that's a benefit.
I think to a certain extent, yeah, there might need to be a sacrifice to make sure that we sort of fit all together as what we agree is normal or okay behavior in social norms. So there may be, yeah, a sacrifice of that individuality or individualism in there. However, I feel like some individuals may not necessarily do things that are morally, objectively good and might actually do some sort of negative behavior that can even hurt people. So in that sacrifice of individuality, I feel like that might be okay in those circumstances for someone who might otherwise just cuss at someone in the street because they bumped them in the shoulder on accident, or someone made a comment to them and they just fly off the handle and go 0 to 60 in like 1 second and take it farther than it may need to go in certain aspects. So a little bit of lost individuality for the sacrifice of, I think, hopefully the greater good.
So this goes back into the complexity of deciphering who you are and the difficulty of determining what has influenced who you are and what is actually you. Because you can take this back to society, your family, your own consciousness. It's very complex, and I would say although there is a line where social norms can influence your personality, I don't think it's that big of a determinant to who you are. And I think you can make a choice to not follow the social norms, which is what people do. And I think that's how you can determine their social norms, by the opposite. You can only identify something with its opposite. And you can only determine their social norms when somebody digresses from the social norms. So I think there is free will.
I would say more often than not, they're important. They, when conveyed properly so everyone understands what they are, benefit society so that we can kind of coexist together without as much like tension in certain situations.
I think social norms kind of go hand in hand with like the social contract, which is kind of like what we all agree is okay. So I think that sort of sets the tone for our public to sort of be civil and interact with each other in a civil way. But normal is what we all agree on, so that can change in the future, who knows?
I would say social norms are not of a great stature, like the epitome of who you are. I believe in free will and that some people exaggerate the impact of social norms, and I think you can create your own personality. Because when you get out of school, there's so much free time. And so I believe that free time is spent cultivating your own personality and your own habits. Like you can create yourself, I believe. And although it may take time, I believe that has a bigger influence on who you are than social norms.
Subsequently, after we accumulated our data pertaining to social norms, there are both positive and negative impacts. And based from our 3 interviewees, the consensus is that social norms create a safe environment in which this concept influences people to behave appropriately, such as being polite and respectful. For example, in The Great Gatsby, how Tom maintained his manners when tensions arose between him and Gatsby.
He didn't transform to his primitive state, which he tried to become calm as possible when convincing Daisy.
I suppose the latest thing is to let Mr. Nobody from Nowhere make love to your wife. Well, if that's the idea, you can count me out. I know I'm not very popular. I don't have big parties. I suppose you have to turn your house into a pigsty to have friends in the modern world.
I want to tell you something, old sport.
Oh, please don't. Why don't we all just go home?
However, according to the 2 teachers depicted, social norms limit people's free expression, which they cannot rightfully use their civil liberties or their First Amendment power, sacrificing their individuality. For example, how Daisy has to maintain this inferior woman facade, inevitably making her powerless.
I've had a very bad time, Nick, and I'm pretty cynical about everything. Everything's terrible anyhow. Everybody thinks so. Most advanced people. And I know. I've been everywhere and seen everything and done everything. Sophisticated. God, I'm so sophisticated.
I've got an idea. I thought you and I could hit the town together Sunday, Nick.
Oh, well, I've really got a lot.
2 o'clock. I'll come get you.
Hence, although social norms make people courteous, it limits their freedom to express themselves, creating a constrained, homogeneous society.